Hello, 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 and welcome to the iShine podcast. I am your girl, A Love, Angela Lewis. I am here with my very special guest. If y'all cannot already tell, look how she got everything just lined up perfectly, looking all cute. It's the
Thank you.
analytical mind, y'all. You see, she a financial liberation expert. So that just means that everything she does is very detail oriented and well put together. And so I am excited because I have none other than Miss Kevette Minor Kane with me this evening. How are you, ma'am? How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much, Angela, for having me here with you tonight.
Absolutely. I'm so excited because, not to say that we don't need it any other time, but typically going into the new year, people are starting to make their thoughts around their finances and how to have better, savings and invest better and improve credit scores and just, make investments and all of those good things. So this is a perfect time for those people who are getting ready to get back in their frame of mind to get
Mhm.
empowered and inspired by Kivette to get yourself together and get in position to do better than maybe you've done up until this point. And if you've been doing great and knocking it out the park, then you're going to get some tips to do even more, right? So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna share a little bit about your bio, and then I'm gonna let you get on in here with it.
Okay.
So Kevette Minor Kane is a financial liberation expert, an ambassador for self worth and gratitude, and a proponent for women's empowerment. She guides women on their journey to self sufficiency by educating them to take back their financial power and supporting them in gaining the confidence to fulfill their purpose in life. As CEO and founder of MarimorLife LLC, her mission is to elevate women worldwide to a greater quality of life. As an educator, a public speaker, and an author, she shares her message of financial liberation through a transformational process which incorporates emotional, mental well being with improved financial habits for continued success. And y'all know we need them financial habits to be improved. We need to get it together. So I'm so grateful because all of that not only shows about your expertise, but it also shows that you have a heart for women to see them excel, to see them do better. But even in reading your bio, Kivette, I know that you're going to tell us a little bit more than what is on paper. So share with us who you really are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. First and foremost, you mentioned that this is the time of year when people are thinking about, their finances and getting reorganized. It absolutely is. This is the perfect time to do your New Year's resolutions, to, take some time to reflect over the previous year or the past year and to identify, maybe those areas where we maybe need a little more work, where we weren't as successful as we wanted to be, and even to celebrate the areas where we were successful, especially to celebrate, to recognize how far we have come, what we did accomplish. Because I think people are really the hardest on themselves, and especially women. We really know how to tear ourselves up when it comes down to it, but we want to take an opportunity to really appreciate the good that we've done and how far we've come so that we can continue to grow forward and to make progress. And so
Oh,
I'm
I
excited
love it.
about
Yes, I love it. I see Kelly is on. So, hey, Miss Kelly A. Bowens, thanks for tuning in, ma'am. And so, I love that you say about moving forward. And the
that.
thing about it is, for a lot of people, when they get into financial ruin or when they get into, just not really knowing how to maneuver, still trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, they
Yeah.
feel devastated. They start getting depressed. They start, kind of experiencing anxiety and just feel like I'm never going to get out of this hole that I've dug myself into. But you're
Yeah.
the liberation expert. So I want you
Yes, ma'am.
to
Absolutely.
tell people how to get liberated from that mindset.
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question specifically the way you did. You said how, because oftentimes we hear people talk about what, but they don't explain what are the steps that you need to now take, the actions that need to be put in place in order for you to accomplish the how, to
Mm-hmm.
make it a reality. And so how is by being able to reset your mindset and to then to subsequently be able to manage your money. You got to reset your mindset first, because we are emotionally affected by money on both ends.
Yeah.
So if there is a financial situation that comes up, it affects us emotionally, whether it's good and we are excited, or
Mhm.
it's maybe not so good and we're a little, challenged, drawn back, even depressed, you
Yeah.
know. And then at the same token, we can, because of our experience with our money, or the way that we've invested, or the way that we've spent our money, then that affects our emotions. So if we've had this, challenge where maybe someone took something from us, then we feel bad about that. But if we have an experience where someone has now given us something, then we feel excited about that. So on both ends, we want to be conscientious about how we are affected emotionally by our interactions with money, whether it was having the money that caused us an emotional circumstance, or it was our emotions that caused us to take an action with our money that either was good or bad. And so the red flags are what we usually talk about in understanding our retail therapy, where people go out and emotionally spend because they're trying to make themselves feel better. And then we get into a situation where we create this cycle because we've overspent and now we feel worse.
Right.
But we don't want to get caught up in that. And then there's the situation where you have made good decisions, and so
Mhm.
now, because you have gone over your accounts and you see that you have made some investments, some really good investments this year, and you've got a little extra, more than you had anticipated, then you can now give yourself an allowance to go out and enjoy a reward. Maybe you have some self-care that you want to invest in,
Mhm.
and recognizing that anything we spend our money on is an investment, either emotionally or financially, where there's something that we're going to be able to get a return from it. If we're not getting that emotional or financial return, then it's just money thrown away. So we want to be conscientious about that as well. So now is the time to get ourselves really on that plain level where we can look for the green flags going into 2022. My theme for this year is healed, healthy, and whole. And there's obviously three reasons for that. We've been through a lot over this last year and a half, 2 years almost now.
Mhm.
And through this COVID-19 pandemic, people have experienced some significant financial traumas.
Right.
But in recognizing the trauma that we've experienced, we have an opportunity to heal. And as we continue to grow in that process, then what we want to focus on is, again, those green flags that are going to help us to maintain a level of health, whether that's in our relationships, in our personal, within ourselves, that introspection that we have an opportunity to do when we're alone, to make sure that in our environments we have a positive, upbuilding feel around us, so that we're able to be encouraged and motivated and even inspired to continue to be positive and productive and progressive
Mhm.
in
Mm.
everything that we do. And so
That's
then finally, of course, that's going to bring us to being whole.
yeah.
And being whole means that we are balanced. So
Yeah.
we're not overspending and we're not hoarding, because we're afraid of letting go of our money. Oh gosh, I don't want it to go away, so I'm just not going to spend it on anything. And we walking around, and there are people who will hoard their money. They have money, and they will walk around with, poor shoes, you know,
Mm.
poor quality clothing,
Yeah.
and they will not take care of themselves, in a physical way or even in an emotional way, eating eating better food,
Right.
which is health is wealth, and
Right.
the reason that health is wealth is because how you show up is really, how you're going to be able to contribute to whatever you're participating in. And that's going to set the tone for you moving forward. And so you want to show up well. You want to show up healthy. You
Mhm.
want to show up balanced. You want to be, honorable, and you want to carry with you a tone of quality. And so, be that self-worth and gratitude is what you balance on both ends. So that self-worth is how you feel about yourself. And then that gratitude is a display of how you feel about the environment and those around you, and showing your appreciation for the blessings that you've received.
That's great. And let me ask you, Kevette, because I know that for a lot of people, their money, I guess, mindsets start from being a child and what they were exposed to, growing up. How
Yes.
do you help people who have self-limiting beliefs about money understand that, or get to a good money management mentality? How do they break this cycle?
Yes. Okay. So the first thing is that I've written a journal. It is my Mindful Money Moments journal. And
Mhm.
I offer this as a free gift to anyone who signs up on my website who gets started on their road to self sufficiency. And so when they go to my website at MarimorLife.com and they're able to click on that start menu, there are 4 steps that they would take to get started on their journey. Whatever that next step is for them, that's where this will lead them to. The first thing they have an opportunity to do is take a survey. That survey is going to not only help me understand where they currently are, but it's also going to raise their attention to maybe some areas in their finances that they weren't aware of prior to
Mhm.
this, exposure. And then once they take that survey, then they're able to schedule a free appointment to actually have a consultation with me where we can identify some opportunities for growth for them. And I tell you, folks, 15 minutes doesn't sound like a lot of time, but you would be amazed at what you can accomplish in 15 minutes. And so then once they have set up that appointment, then they're able to go ahead and get their freebies, which includes that Mindful Money Moments journal. And that journal is going to help them to identify where they are right now, in addition to looking at where they've come from. So there is a portion in that journal which talks about, how do you feel about money? Who was the person who influenced you about money? Where do those thoughts come from? And how do you, put that into perspective today? Because we recognize that, yes, that money memory from so long ago, from our
Mhm.
childhood, even before kids can talk, they're paying attention to the words that they hear spoken, the tone that's used with those words, and then even the facial expressions or the body language that they pick up on.
Mhm.
And when they see money being exchanged and people having conversations about money, it sets in a feeling for them very early on. And
Mhm.
so we actually carry that with us through our lifetime. And unfortunately, what happens is because we don't give enough attention to those initial feelings and then identifying really how we can maybe improve those feelings if they weren't so good from the start, then we carry those negative feelings with us throughout a lifetime. And it sets a tone for our relationship with money. People talk about their relationships with other people. Well, money has an energy, and all we deal with in life is energy. It just keeps flowing
Right.
to us and flowing right out.
Yes, the flow. Yes.
Absolutely.
Currency has a flow. I
That's
love
it.
that you said that.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's exactly what it is. Money is currency. And so recognizing that energy was what's going to be able to help us to be able to put ourselves in perspective
Mhm.
and to understand, how do I need to now shift my thinking so that I can improve in my relationship with this money. And so that journal is one way how. It tells you those specific steps, and it's the mindset as well as the money management. So it gives you both sides of the coin. The other thing is that you asked before about how someone can relieve themselves from the anxiety that comes up when they start to think about dealing with their money.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a very simple technique that I have created initially for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then being able to share with others, and they have found benefit from it. And so I hope that you all, whoever is watching this broadcast, either live now or
Mm-hmm.
on the replay later, will be able to benefit. So there's 4 steps. The first one is to be able to identify that I am enough. So there's 4 affirmations. That first one is I am enough. Because what I found is that most people, when they're dealing with the anxiety that comes with dealing with their money, is that they really feel that sense of scarcity, like there isn't enough, or
Mm.
maybe they feel unequipped, inadequate in their ability or in their knowledge to manage their money properly. And so by telling yourself, I am enough, you are now affirming that that is where you want to be. You're rebuilding your confidence.
That's good.
And that's from the core. And so then the second affirmation would
But
be
before you go to the second one, let me ask you something because I see somebody say, wow, very thought provoking. Tanya, thank you, Tanya Bird. Thank you so much for being on the broadcast. Kelly's repeating, I am enough. I wanted to go back to what you said about even when you're a child, not only are you seeing how
Mhm.
money is being transacted, but the feeling that you have with it. And if you felt like, if you associated negative things or sad things or anger behind, money transactions,
Mhm.
sometimes they will put you in a position of where you feel like you're not enough. And so your feelings that you have with money tend to come in the form of what you said, of wearing old shoes or low cheap clothes, or eating frugal meals or things like that, because you don't feel like you deserve it. You don't feel like you are enough to have something extravagant.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you put that out there, because a lot of times you don't associate with that thought process with money, but at the same time it is that relationship of, I don't feel worthy, I don't feel like I'm enough to be able to go out here and splurge.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
good,
Absolutely.
that's
And
good.
then that leads us to the second affirmation, which is that I have enough.
Mm,
And so recognizing that you have enough means that you recognize you have enough to get you to where you want to go.
that's
So
good.
maybe you feel like you need $1,000, and maybe you need $1,000 to pay your rent,
Mm-hmm.
and you literally don't have enough. But when you tell yourself that I have enough, what you're affirming is that you have enough to get to where you need to go. So then the question is, how are you going to use what you have in order to get what you need? And
You
that is being
have
resourceful.
to.
So it's shifting our mindset so that we're looking at what the opportunities are in front of us. Because oftentimes those opportunities exist.
Mm-hmm.
They're just there. They're like, the air floating around us.
Right.
But oftentimes what happens is that because we're not prepared to look at them, or we're not in the frame of thought to recognize that they're there, we don't see them. It's kind of
Mm.
like when you go to buy a new car, and you go to the dealership and see this great car, and you've never seen it before, and you like, oh, nobody's gonna have my car. I got this
Right.
all mine. I'm the only one. You get off the lot and you drive home and you see 3 of them on the way home, and you're like, oh, how
Right.
in the world did that happen?
Good.
Like, they went and got my car the same time I did. No, no, no. That's not what happened. What had happened was
They've
you
always had those
you
cars.
have
You just
that
ain't
car.
paid attention to it.
But exactly. Now that you have that car, you're seeing it. It's
Right.
just like opportunities. So when we start looking for opportunities, they will reveal themselves to us. They've always been there, but we haven't been able to see them because we haven't been looking for them in the right places. And so
Ah,
that I have enough is what opens our eyes to be able to get to that point.
that's powerful. Let me read this quote. Kelly put up there. That's so true. I grew up very poor. I had to change my view of money, especially when I crossed over the poverty level I grew up in.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a big deal. Congratulations to you, Kelly, because that is a big deal. And celebrate that, being able to recognize that you have grown above where you were and that you're going to continue to elevate even from this point. And so that brings into perspective our third affirmation, which is I do enough. And so what that helps us to understand is that we are sufficient in what we do. We have enough within ourselves to do the work necessary to accomplish our goals. The challenge oftentimes is that opportunity looks like work.
Mm.
It's not a free ride. A free ride is not free. It still costs gas. It still costs time, right?
Right.
Still usage on the vehicle, so it's not free,
Free is
where
relative, honey. Free is relative.
absolutely. And that's the thing. Where is the expense coming from? And
Mhm.
so the question for us when we say I do enough is that I'm going to encourage myself to make sure that I'm being active, that I'm doing what's necessary in order for me to get to the next level.
Yes.
And then so that brings us to the fourth affirmation, our final one, which is really what takes us outside of ourselves. Because we're going to recognize that God is my provider. And you can
Yes.
say that however you choose. I know that everybody has different religious beliefs, but on a spiritual level, we have to recognize that there is something bigger than us at play here. And that we are not the center of the universe, as it would be. And so recognizing that greater force, that greater source that
Mhm.
exists, and turning our reliance on to understand that we are not alone in our efforts, that the universe will work with us to make these things happen, because there's certain laws that exist that we can work in harmony with. The law of manifestation, the law of attraction,
Mhm.
those different laws, the laws of assumption, being able to recognize what those things are and how to manifest and how to put them into play for our own lives, allows us to be a part of that bigger picture. And then finally, we would say, whatever is comfortable for you, and so it is, to confirm. And that would be either amen or ashe, whatever you're comfortable with. But making that final statement, and so it is, means that you're confirming that what you've said, I am enough, I have enough, I do enough, God is my provider, that recognizing that greater source, that you are confirming those things to continue to be your truth. And so as you do that, you're able to move forward with confidence. And what you do is you shift within yourself the perspective. And it is literally all about your perspective. It is how you see things. It is about not being down on yourself about what you don't have, but being appreciative for what you do have so that you can do better. And
Mm.
knowing that you have an opportunity to grow. If you're at the bottom, guess where the only place you can go is up.
Oh,
And
and
that's it.
and I love,
Absolutely.
I'm really big on gratitude. I even started a 30-day challenge, and of course it's 30 days, but at the same time, it gets you in the mindset of recognizing what you have.
Mhm.
And I always say that just because you're grateful for where you are, it doesn't mean that you can't anticipate and expect something better, but you can
Exactly.
be appreciative of what you have and where you are. And being able to say these affirmations, starting with I am enough, I have enough, I do enough, God is my provider, and so it is. And
Mhm.
those things are things that, right before this broadcast, we were on with Lakeisha Dixon, who is the breakthrough strategist, and she was talking about the power in declaring and decreeing. And
Yeah,
so when you say those things, you get in alignment with what you're beginning to believe, so that, as you said, and so it is, it starts to
absolutely.
manifest itself. And we really have to, if we want to see better, we have to do better. You can't keep on with the same stinking thinking and expect
Mhm.
to have something better. And that's especially true with your relationship with money. So, yes, honey, y'all better come on and let Kevette be a liberation expert over here
Absolutely.
and liberate us with
That's
our
right.
money. So let me ask you this, because as we're talking about it, Kevette, I know that for you personally, you went through a period of time where you dealt with some personal issues that
Mhm.
allowed you to, was that the catalyst that positioned you to start seeking becoming a financial liberation expert?
Absolutely. That was what created me as a financial liberation expert. The experiences that I have contribute to my expertise. I actually have a degree in finance from 20 years ago, and
Mhm,
I've worked in the field for more than 10 years. I have, been a homeschool teacher for my kids for 13 years.
mhm,
Both of my children are grown at this point in time. But what really was the pivotal or transitional point for me was just a few years ago when I survived three major traumas in just under 2 years. And that started in 2017 when I lived in Puerto Rico and I survived Hurricane Maria on the island, and everything was destroyed. Literally, I was working one day, and within 36 hours, I could no longer do the work that I was doing because everything had been destroyed. So I had to pivot immediately to figure out how I was going to be able to provide an income for my family. Every day that I worked, it was a dependency relationship because the money that I brought in allowed us to eat for that day.
mhm.
It was a blessing and a curse. It was a curse in the way that, no one should ever have to experience that kind of devastation.
Right.
But it was a blessing in that what it did was it leveled the playing field. It gave me a clean slate and a fresh start, literally. Then the second event was that in 2018, a little over a year after Maria happened, my father passed away with no life insurance and no will in place. That actually was the event that brought me back to the United States to care for his final affairs and to handle his funeral arrangements and all those things. That was challenging because, of course, with no will and no life insurance,
Mhm.
where will we get the funding to bury him honorably? And unfortunately, I didn't have any funds available because I had mismanaged my own money for a number of years prior
Mhm.
to returning to the States. And so when I came, I got off the plane and I literally had the change left from a meal I ate in the airport and the bags with the clothes, I had on my back. And so that was where I had to literally start from ground zero, figuring out what I was going to do to manage through his final affairs and then to reestablish myself as well. And that reestablishment actually came about a few months later, in April of 2019, when my marriage dissolved. I was married for 17 years at that point in time, and it was unfortunately an abusive relationship on all levels: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and financial. It was a blessing to get out of the relationship. However, no one gets married to get divorced. So
Right.
it was a very grievous event for me, having to go through that transition. But what it forced me to do was to think of how I would have to reestablish myself from that point because I couldn't go back home. I didn't have anything really established here. I had been working through my father's, final affairs and things. He um, had a little property that my sister and I were able to, take advantage of that and to be able to have an inheritance, but it wasn't much.
Mhm.
And so from that point, I had to figure out, well, what am I going to do to care for myself? But not only that, to make sure that I don't end up in the same position that my father was in. He was a double business owner and he was working to build a legacy of wealth. He just ran out of time. And he
Yeah.
was prepared, unfortunately. By the time he was looking to get life insurance, he didn't qualify for it,
Mm.
you know? And that's the challenge that we find often in our community.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but we need to be very conscientious about preparing before it's needed. And that's one of the reasons why I became a life insurance agent at that time. I returned to life insurance field and I started to work in building my business with that. But what I found with my clients even there was that I needed to support them in doing their financial planning and budgeting before we could even get them set up for a life insurance policy. Because if they didn't know what kind of money they had, how would they know what they could afford? And
Right.
how would they know what they could not just afford, but what they could be able to keep? Because
Yeah.
life insurance means nothing if you pay for it for a few months and then let it go. All you've done is given the insurance company some money. But what you want to do is get that policy and make sure that you keep it, so then you're being able to create wealth for your legacy, as opposed to leaving a legacy of debt behind for your descendants. And so that is the thing that motivates me at this point, helping people to recognize how through these financial traumas that we have experienced,
Mm-hmm.
we're able to really recognize how our emotions have affected our financial decisions. But we can now choose to make better decisions, to create better habits, and to experience a greater quality of life. And that is in harmony with our purpose.
That's good. I see Kelly put up here great info. And again, we don't really emphasize enough for people to understand that getting a life insurance policy, a lot of times that's the first thing to go. Whenever things get tight, you drop that. But like you just said, nobody really thinks of you just giving free money to an insurance company that doesn't even have to pay you it back once you
Right.
allow this policy to lapse. And
Yeah.
so we do have to, I believe you said, transform your mind about your finances to understand that paying into a life insurance policy is just as important as the car note you pay, just as important as the mortgage you pay, just as important as anything else, because that's where the legacy takes place. And for a lot of communities, that's how they build legacy. That's how they have generational wealth, because they
Mm-hmm.
take the time to invest in things that will give them a return on the investment that their children and their children's children can partake of.
Yeah, let's
So,
think about a time though, even before we get to leaving that legacy of wealth, because if you're not leaving a legacy of wealth, you are absolutely leaving a legacy of debt. There are going to be expenses that your family will have to pay, even if you say, "Oh, just go ahead and cremate me." It's going to cost more than that. One thing that I didn't know, and you hear the quote all the time: "All you got to do is, pay taxes and die." You
yeah.
know, the thing is that, yes, that's absolutely right, because even after you die, you have to pay taxes. Yeah.
Mm.
And that part was like, what? Wait, what? That was shocking for me. But that was part of what we had to handle, and as a responsibility for handling my father's final affairs. And people don't remember that. It's this is the financial burden that you're leaving on your family. Yeah, you feel like, well, you're not going to have to deal with any of it. No, you won't, because you won't be around. But what are you creating? A double tragedy for your family? They've already experienced the trauma of losing you in death, a
Mhm.
loved one that they would love to be able to keep around forever. But now there's a second tragedy, because financially they're unable to care for the responsibility of an honorable burial, or even caring for any of the financial uh, expenses that go along with that, whether there's medical expenses, maybe there's emergency expenses that they had to pay for end of life, different things like that. And people don't like to talk about that kind of stuff, but that's the reality,
Mhm.
that you leave behind as a legacy. And so having a policy in place is going to alleviate some of that. The other thing is recognizing as well that there are living benefits to life insurance. So it's not like your old, your grandma's life insurance policy, or your great great grandma's life insurance policy, where, you only paid it and it only paid you when you died.
Right.
Nowadays, there are life insurance policies that you are able to have a cash accrual in those accounts, and or within those policies. And so when you're able to access that cash before you have actually passed away. So if you have a critical, chronic, or terminal diagnosis, oftentimes you can reach out to your insurance company and handle some of the expenses for caring for yourself before end of life, during that period of time. And even if you're terminal, then you can take care of some of the things that you want to do by managing that money in advance. Many
Mm.
people obviously don't receive a terminal, diagnosis, and they don't even have the privilege of making those kinds of plans beforehand, with that knowledge. But if they're able to plan and to have that money available in advance, then they can provide for their expenses, and maybe even give gifts to family members while they're still living. And that's a huge blessing for many people. The other thing is that a lot of people have not thought about, those who actually had those cash accrual accounts during COVID-19. That's how some people survived, because they were able to draw off of those accounts during this tragedy, during this trauma. That's what insurance is for. Insurance is for when accidents happen, for when the unexpected comes and affects you financially. And that's exactly what COVID-19 did. So there were many people who already had these kinds of policies in place, and they were able to lean on those finances to be able to make ends meet to get them through this pandemic.
That's some powerful information that I'm sure people probably never really even think about. A lot of times people just go to work, take out the little group policy that's at work, and that's just it. You don't think
Yeah.
about preparing yourself or positioning yourself actually to be set up where if things happen that you can borrow from that policy, that you can withdraw from that policy to take care of other things. This has been some really good information. And just to kind of go back, even in you sharing your story about those three major traumas that happened within a short period of time, you were able to, reinvent yourself into this financial liberation expert. And you shared your story, a part of that story, in a book that you co-authored. So what was the writing experience like as you went back and revisited that time in your life?
Yeah, that was tough, because when we're doing healing work, it requires us to go deep,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes we have to really get in and treat those wounds so that they. I was so excited, that I had an opportunity to really share, my thoughts and feelings. And so the chapter that I wrote in this book, Reinvented to Rise, is entitled "From Rescue Fantasy to Full Responsibility." And
Mm-hmm.
that was significant to me because one of my mentors, Melody Hobson, who is an amazing financial figure, Black woman, and she's just accomplished so much, and I so admire her. And so I was watching, one of her YouTube videos. She did a podcast herself one day and
Mm-hmm.
mentioned this quote by Judy Collins, who is an American singer, where Judy Collins was stating that, women have often been taught these rescue fantasies, that there's going to be some knight on a white horse or knight in shining armor or,
Mm-hmm.
Prince Charming who's going to come and rescue them. And so
Right.
what that does is falling into that means that we don't have to take responsibility for the choices that we've made, because, oh, he's going to come and clean it all up and
Gonna
everything's going
swoop
to be
in, honey, and get you.
yeah, right. Yeah, no.
Listen, ain't nobody coming,
There's
but let's
nothing
look.
we can do
Let's go
without
on and yeah, let's go on and dispel the myth. Nobody's swooping in to get you.
yes, ma'am. That does not happen. And even if you have a good man to come into your life, you need to be a good partner for him.
Oh,
And so
good.
that's where taking full responsibility comes into play. That we need to make sure that we're carrying responsibility for the choices and the decisions that we've made. We're not blaming or shaming anybody else. And we're not even blaming or shaming ourselves for the poor decisions that we've made, but it's taking responsibility for those decisions, which helps us to acknowledge that we chose to be where we are right now.
Mm,
And that
listen,
in doing that, we give ourselves the power to now choose where we want to go from this point forward. And so that's where our true power comes in.
you better come on and be powerful. And that that is a perfect segue because as she is dropping these gems, as she's giving us so much knowledge, Kevette has recently been nominated for Success Magazine's Top 125 Thought Leaders of 2021. That is such an amazing accomplishment. And now I see, with the information that you have, with what you're willing to share, with your passion and your commitment to seeing women and men, of course, too, but to see us be better than where we are, to see us, make better choices, take responsibility. Like you said, nobody's coming in to save you. They're not going to swoop in and save the day. You have to become responsible enough to make better choices. And I know that for a lot of people, situations happen, and some things may be out of control. And yes, somebody says congratulations. I think yes, Tanya said congratulations on your nomination. So it's just a beautiful thing. I believe in celebrating people, and honoring people for their accomplishments, and the work that you've put in to get where you are is just outstanding. And the fact that you have such a heart for people, to see them be better, and to transform their minds when it comes to finances, because the bottom line, we have to have finances in this world. You cannot, no matter what you think, even for the people who just feel like they don't want to deal with life anymore, and just go from shelter to shelter, or different places, thinking that, okay, I'm just going to let somebody else take care of me. That's not everybody's situation. But
Right.
for some people, they do take advantage of it. They may get on the corner and, put a sign up, and want you to donate money, and they go around and get in their new car, or go and do some other things. And so you have to be mindful of the things that happen, the decisions that you make, being responsible for your life, making those choices. Let's see. Kelly says, congratulations, just from the content in your heart on this live. It is well deserved.
Oh, thank you
Absolutely.
so much. Thank you, Kelly.
Yes, yes, yes. But Kevette, I know that not only just to kind of help people know, because after this broadcast, I want them to follow you. I want them to tap in to what you do. Can you tell them a little bit about your business, Miramore
Yes.
LLC?
Yes, absolutely. It's MarimorLife LLC, and mindset and money management is the absolute focus of my company and everything that I do. I'm also the head of financial planning at a tax firm, the Brockington firm, over in Baltimore. So I'm working there, doing financial planning and business planning as well with my clients. But through MarimorLife, I'm actually able to create courses, seminars, and workshops to increase our level of consciousness about how our mindset affects our money management. And so I have created a mentorship program as well as a membership program through my website. And anyone who wants to connect with me can go to that website at MarimorLife.com and to get started by clicking start on the menu. And when you go through to that start page, there's 4 simple steps for you to get started with. Once you complete those steps, then we'll be able to connect as I described earlier. And then that's where you'll be able to take your next step on the journey to self-sufficiency. And that's what it's all about. See, when I call myself a financial liberation expert, because it's about more than financial freedom, and it's different from being financially independent. Financial freedom is what someone else gives you, but liberation is what you determine or take advantage of for yourself. So it's the
Mhm.
empowering phrase that helps you to recognize your decisions, your choices, and your experience is what you are able to create. Um, and then on the other hand, that independence, people always talk about being financially independent,
Mhm.
but I recognize, and I look at definitions very closely, because I recognize that we speak into existence things in our lives. And independence is a very separatist kind of mood or feeling. It's where oftentimes feel like, you hear people say, oh, I don't need nobody. I got this all on my own. I do it all by myself. I'm independent. And that's not how we were created. We were actually created to be interdependent. We are dependent upon one another,
Mhm.
but we can be self-sufficient, meaning that we care for ourselves properly first and then serve others from the overflow. And so that's the shift in our thinking that helps us to recognize where we really want to be, but being able to identify what that looks like. And so that's why I share these seminars, courses, and workshops, so that we're able to do that work, to know what questions to ask and
Mhm.
how to find the answers within ourselves. Because you already have all the answers to the questions that you're going to ask. I just have the questions that you don't know yet to ask. And so I teach you what those questions are so that you can go a little bit deeper and be able to grow a little bit stronger. And so that's the goal.
Yes.
Reach me through MarimorLife.com, and I would love to connect with you. I'm also on Instagram and through other social media at MarimorLife. And you can reach me personally through I Am Kevette.
I love it. I love it about the self-sufficiency. And let me just put this up here. The info you shared would be so beneficial to young people in so many ways. In most cases, if finance isn't discussed in the home.
Yeah. And, to address that, because you mentioned something earlier, you said how I serve women and men. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I don't serve guys directly because I serve men through the women who influence them.
That's
I serve
powerful.
men through the women who influence them, their mothers, their sisters, their daughters. And so I'm able to connect with women on this level so that we're able to take back our financial power, because women rule the world, and the question is, well, how can we say that? It sounds arrogant, it sounds like we claiming more power than we own, but we do own that power, because every leader in the world has a mother, and it's
Come
just
on
that
and drop the mic on them. Yes. Just to say FYI, just in case you didn't know. Yes.
just in case.
I love it because, just in the what you just said about the differentiation of independence and self-sufficiency, that's powerful. And a lot of times we are talking and we're making statements and not really realizing that what we're saying is not actually what we want to convey.
Right.
And so there's power in that. And if, with all of the things you said about finances and being liberated, that piece right there to me really stands out because we're so loose with the things that we say, and it's catchphrases and it sounds good, but at the end of the day, you're not speaking life over your situation. You're
Yeah.
really speaking death to your situation. And so I really thank you for giving us the clarification about that so that we can shift how we speak. Because like you said, we weren't created to be independent. If that's the case, it wouldn't be multiplication. It wouldn't be, to go out and
Mm-hmm.
multiply. So obviously it was meant for us to, be interdependent. And
Mm-hmm.
so that right there could shift somebody's mindset to say, stop trying to be independent, just learn to be self-sufficient. And that will solve a lot of things that, we go through.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I have it going across the screen how you can reach out to the website, to MarimorLife.com. You can reach her on, like she said, on her social media, on Instagram. Follow her, take that quiz, get you some information, connect with her because she is out here trying to make a difference. She's out here changing lives. She's out here giving you a way to help you to become liberated so that you can leave that legacy you truly want to leave for your family. So, Kevette, anything else that you want to leave the audience with before we end the broadcast?
I just want to wish that everyone would be well into the new year. Please care for yourself first, but let's not be selfish. There's a difference. When you care for yourself first, that means that you are making sure that your cup is full so that you can serve from the overflow. If you're being selfish, that means that you're hoarding everything for yourself and you are not concerned about anybody else. So we want to make that differentiation the same way we make the differentiation between the independence and the interdependence, recognizing who we are and what our purpose is. You are amazing. You are absolutely amazing. And I want you to stand in that every day. Stand in the mirror for at least 30 seconds and smile at yourself every morning and tell yourself how amazing you are. Repeat that affirmation: I am enough. I have enough. I do enough. God is my provider. Amen. And then allow yourself to really put those things into motion in your lives and see what you manifest in 2022. Write me about it. Send me a message through the DMs on Instagram, Facebook, or, go to my blog and leave a comment on one of those posts and let me know how you're doing. And I look forward to being in connection with you.
Awesome. And going into 2022, her theme is healthy, healed, and whole. And that
Yes.
is something we wish for each and every person. And one thing I was remiss about, I want to come back and just say congratulations to Kevette because she is the newest iShine contributing writer for the magazine. So we welcome her to the family. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise, bringing that wisdom, bringing that empowerment for us to just get ourselves together. In 2022, I believe it's going to be a game changer changer for a lot of people, because not only are we going to be we're healing in multiple areas, healing in our finances, healing in relationships, healing emotionally, healing mentally. You know, we're tapping into multiple buckets. It's not just about one thing. We're trying to make sure that we hit them all. And when you do that, that positions you to be healthy, healed, and whole.
Absolutely. And so make sure that you guys also tap into that iShine article for December 2021. The title for my column is Know Your Numbers. And so that's going to be the thing to help you to kind of get yourself organized for 2022 so that you can be healed, healthy, and whole going in, and making sure that you know your numbers, set your goals, and accomplish every one of them.
All right, y'all heard it from Miss Kevette Minor Kane, honey. Get them numbers together so you can go into 2022 being powerful and confident. All
Yes.
right, thank you so much, Kevette. It was a pleasure
Thank
having you
you.
here. Y'all get used to this face, because honey, she's gonna be all over the place doing all kinds of things, getting you educated to be financially strong and powerful and confident. Y'all have a fantastic rest of the evening. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.